Hello, this presentation is going to discuss the issues based on cross-curricular teaching, specifically in science and English, but also the use of ICT in lessons and the effects. To begin with, let's look at how cross-curricular teaching was established and developed over the years till now. Starting with the Plowden Report in 1967, this was the first report to be published on education in England. The report has many areas that are based on Piaget's theory of cognitive and affective development, focused on the children. The Plowden Report discusses how to develop a more informal, child-centred style of education, with an emphasis on individualisation and learning by discovery. However, this would create problems among critics who blame Plowden for the failings in primary education. Secondly was the Three Wise Men report, produced by Robin Alexander, Jim Rose and Chris Woodhead in 1992. All three men had a large input into the education system. And Education Secretary Kenneth Clark asked the men to write a report to bring back the traditional methods of teaching. Some of those methods included concentrating solely on the national curriculum subjects, more use of whole class teaching, and children being grouped into abilities. Even though there was high debate about this report and teachers not being happy with some of the differences from Plowden, we see a lot of the suggestions from this report in today's teaching still. Shortly after this report, the national curriculum went under revision in 1999, which was overseen by the QCA. The national curriculum needed to be explained better, and teachers received the National Curriculum Handbook for Teachers. It mentioned that children were entitled to a coherent, broad and balanced curriculum. During this time that the national curriculum was being revised, Boyle and Bragg began a 10-year study between 1997 and 2007. This was to find out how schools were using teaching through a cross-curricular approach. The numeracy and literacy strategies meant teaching became more discrete in terms of cross-curricular subjects, but by 2002, schools began to reintroduce cross-curricular teaching. This was found from an Ofsted report in 2002 that the use of cross-curricular teaching was the key success of primary schools. Finally, the most recent report is the Rose Review, written by Sir Jim Rose from the Three Wise Men report in 2008. This report was about what was being done to help children with dyslexia in terms of one-to-one support and reading recovery support. He also promoted the idea of cross-curricular teaching in terms of higher standards were met through direct, high-quality subject teaching when using and applying cross-curricular studies. So what is cross-curricular teaching? Harlan, 2014, talks about cross-curricular themes and the links that we should be taking advantage of, any overlap between subjects and any reinforcement that learning in one area can offer to another by planning through topic rather than separate subjects. Kelly, 2013, discusses about how, in this instance, other subjects will help support science, in particular in terms of better learning. Recent reports about cross-curricular work emphasise the importance of limiting the number of subjects which contribute to a given theme or topic to ensure that there is a clear focus for children's learning. From the information we know so far about cross-curricular teaching, we can see controversy. This is where we look into some of the reasons why it can be useful to learning and why it could not. Price, 2010, tells us from a study he did with his school and using a cross-curricular approach that children now used new thinking skills and have enabled children to look at tasks from different angles. Also, the children have had a newfound confidence in subjects that they didn't always achieve as well in. Kelly, 2013, cited from Jarvis, 2009, tells us that in science, using effective cross-curricular links helps children appreciate the relevance of scientific ideas and skills. Boyle and Bragg, 2008, found that developing cross-curricular links enabled schools to develop a broad and balanced curriculum. On the other hand, Muige and Reynolds, 2011, suggests that a cross-curricular approach can lack rigour and pupils might not be able to develop those essential subject-specific skills. Barnes, 2011, has suggested that if we continue with cross-curricular teaching, in particular discrete, other subjects will lose their identity and then will get further pushed out of the national curriculum. Finally, Jarvis 2009 has discussed how also some links between subjects are so loosely connected that they have no meaning and relevance to the subject being taught. So how could we use cross-curricular teaching positively in science and English? We can start by looking at the national curriculum for both English and science, specifically at the speaking and listening section. Looking at this table I created, you can see some of the similarities between the two subjects in both Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. For example, in science, when doing an experiment, we have to use skills such as investigation, planning, communicating, reporting, predicting, and more. All of these things are important aspects to implicate into children's learning from the national curriculum. Surely this means the close links in learning between the subjects means we could teach English and science in a cross-curricular approach when it comes to speaking and listening, as long as we cannot let the negatives that were mentioned before affect the teaching. Jarvis 2009 suggests other suitable cross-curricular teaching approaches, such as a narrative about carrying out a science investigation, or a biography or autobiography of a scientist. It is also mentioned in this instance encouraging teachers to use the national curriculum as the basis for their planning, and assessment is essential if they are to make creative cross-curricular links that support progression. The importance of spoken language in science. Lemke 1990 in Talking Science discusses in great length about doing science through the medium of language. This involves the role of language in teaching science and how this is important when it comes to how the conceptual content is communicated through semantic patterns. Byrne et al. 1994 said difficulty with languages causes difficulty with reasoning, meaning if children are not able to use the scientific language and actually understand the meaning, then it will prove further complications and errors in that child's learning in the future. It all comes down to how Wellington and Osborne 2011 believe learning the language of science is the most important part of science education. Children are encouraged to discuss scientific language verbally before writing it down. This will help children feel less scared about the terminology because they are more familiar with the language. All of this links back nicely to the key features of speaking and listening in the English national curriculum and is another reason to use cross-curricular teaching in these specific areas. The use of ICT in science and English is increasing in the classroom. If we look back to the table, we can now see the benefits ICT has to science and the English speaking and listening national curriculum. ICT has given us the opportunity to share ideas through presentation, like this one, and the children can do the same. The use of ICT is also backed up by comments from Byrne and Sharp 2002, who tell us that the BECTA, British Educational Communication and Technology Agency, has found that schools who have good ICT resources and are using them in teaching of science are achieving higher standards. We can use ICT to our benefit by using different programs such as Excel to collate data from science experiments and Scratch to create stories from our English writing. Other ways we can use ICT in science would be to find information by researching on the internet, also using email to share our information to other schools, and finally to create posters and displays. You will notice that teachers and trainees like myself are using such things as interactive whiteboards, videos and audio in our lessons every day effectively to create engaging lessons for children. Not only can we watch videos on the internet, but we can create them too. Using laptops, phones and video cameras, we can record the work children have created or even make a time-lapse of a certain experiment. We can also record audio, again using phones, tablets, laptops and voice recorders, giving children the chance to explore their speaking and listening skills. Then there are photos. We can take photos so easily of trips children have been on to look back on in the future, work children have created, or getting a closer view of something for more detail. The possibilities with ICT are endless, plus new and exciting technology is always being created, so we can never get bored. To summarise, I believe cross-curricular teaching in English and science In particular, speaking and listening can be achieved if we consider the national curriculum at all times in our teaching and planning. We should make sure that when we are planning cross-curricular subjects that they are both relevant and not being used for the sake of making subjects cross-curricular. I believe that I have shown the positives and negatives of cross-curricular teaching to an extent that we should be able to use this approach and also include some exciting lessons that include ICT that will create an engaging learning experience for all children to enjoy. Thank you for watching this presentation.